Hello family, welcome to Stories with JAYVIL. Please subscribe and leave a like for us. It means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and remember to turn on the post notifications so you don't miss any future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Now sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The village of Ameobi rested peacefully in the embrace of lush green hills and fertile farmland, its simplicity mirrored in the lives of its people. Among them was Amara, a widowed mother whose strength and resilience inspired quiet admiration. Her husband Duka had been the cornerstone of their small family, but his sudden passing left her alone with their only son, Obina, and the burden of a future she was determined to secure. Life had never been easy in Ameobi, but Amara worked tirelessly to ensure her son never felt the weight of their struggles. At dawn, she could be seen in the fields, her hands buried in the soil as she planted yams and cassava. By afternoon, she wove baskets under the shade of a tree, her fingers moving with practiced precision. Though her hands were rough and her back ached, her heart was full of hope for Obina's future. Obina, she often said, her voice soft yet firm, education is the only way to escape this life. You must work hard, my son, and make something of yourself. Obina was only 7 years old when his father passed, but even at that young age he understood his mother's sacrifices. He was a curious and bright child, always eager to learn. In the evenings he would sit by the fire with a tattered book in hand, his voice steady as he read aloud to his mother. Amara would listen intently, her eyes shining with pride as she imagined the man her son might one day become. One day Mr. Obina, the village schoolteacher, visited their modest home. Amara, he began, your son is a remarkable boy. He has a gift for learning, but he will need more than what we can offer in this village. That night, as Amara lay on her mat, she gazed at the thatched roof of their hut, her thoughts filled with both hope and worry. The path ahead was uncertain, but she made a silent promise. I will do whatever it takes to give Obina a future beyond this village. From that moment, every basket she wove, every hour she toiled in the fields, became a step toward that dream. Little did she know, her unwavering devotion would shape not just her son's future, but her legacy as well. As Obina grew, his passion for learning only deepened. His quick grasp of lessons and insatiable curiosity set him apart from his peers in the small school of Amaobi. His teacher, Mr. Obina, often marveled at his brilliance and spared no chance to encourage him. This boy, the teacher said one day, has the mind to achieve great things. But he needs opportunities beyond what this village can offer. Amara's heart swelled with pride each time she heard of her son's achievements, yet she felt the weight of what it would cost to provide him with the education he deserved. The challenge became clearer when a life-changing opportunity arose. Obina was offered a partial scholarship to a prestigious secondary school in Umuiz, a town many miles away. The scholarship was a beacon of hope, but it came with strings attached. While tuition was covered, the cost of books, uniforms, and lodging would fall entirely on Amara. The amount seemed insurmountable, but Amara refused to let the opportunity slip away. Her first sacrifice came swiftly. She sold her husband's farming tools, the last relics of his hard work. Next went her prize goat, a source of milk and income, which she exchanged for enough money to cover Obina's first-term expenses. Each sale was a small heartbreak, but Amara's resolve remained unshaken. The day of departure arrived, and the village came alive with bittersweet emotions. Neighbors gathered at the dusty bus station to bid farewell to Obina, who stood proudly in his new school uniform. Amara, clutching a small bundle of his belongings, struggled to hold back tears. Remember your roots, she whispered as she handed him an envelope containing her meager savings and a handwritten letter. No matter where life takes you, never forget who you are and where you come from. I won't, Mama, Obina promised, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. As the bus rumbled away, carrying Obina toward a new future, Amara stood by the roadside, watching until it disappeared from sight. Though her heart ached, it brimmed with hope. My son will make me proud, she whispered to herself. Little did she know this journey would set the stage for triumphs, heartbreak, and lessons neither of them could foresee. Life in Ameobi became a relentless cycle of sacrifices for Amara. With Obina now in Umies, excelling in his prestigious secondary school, the financial demands only grew. Tuition was covered by the scholarship, but books, uniforms, and food were constant expenses. Each term Amara was faced with a daunting choice. What more could she sell to support her son? She began by selling her farmland, the last piece of her husband's legacy. It was a painful decision, one that left her with nothing but a small garden near her hut. Villagers watched in quiet amazement as Amara made these sacrifices without complaint. "How much more can she give?" they whispered among themselves. But Amara refused to waver. She worked long hours weaving baskets and mats, her hands raw and aching, her back bent from years of labor. Each time she completed a sale, she set aside every penny for Obina. To her, every sacrifice was a step closer to seeing her son succeed and rise above the hardships of village life. Meanwhile, Obina thrived in Umuez. He wrote home frequently, his letters filled with stories of his achievements and the new world he was discovering. "Mama," he wrote in one letter, "I've joined the debate team and our teacher says I might win an award soon. Thank you for believing in me." Amara read each letter with pride, often sharing them with the villagers. "My son is making something of himself," she told them. "Every day I thank God for him." But the demands of supporting him soon became overwhelming. When the money from the farmland ran out, Amara sold her prized gold earrings, a wedding gift from her late husband. The villagers were astonished by her determination. "You've done enough," her neighbor Ngozi said. "Let the boy find his own way now." Amara only smiled faintly. "A mother's love knows no limits," she replied. As Obina neared the end of secondary school, he earned a scholarship to a prestigious university in Ibuka City. The entire village celebrated, and Amara, though proud, knew the journey was far from over. The city would bring greater opportunities, but it would also demand greater sacrifices. Late one evening, as Amara sat weaving baskets under the dim light of an oil lamp, she whispered to herself, "As long as I have breath, I will not stop. My son will achieve his dreams." What she didn't realize was that her boundless love would soon be tested in ways she could never imagine. The day Obina left for Ebuka City was one of mixed emotions for Amara. On one hand, her heart swelled with pride. Her son was now on the cusp of achieving the bright future she had sacrificed so much for. On the other hand, the weight of parting from him, perhaps indefinitely, pressed heavily on her spirit. The entire village of Amaobi gathered to see him off. Obina, now a young man of 18, stood tall and confident in his neatly ironed shirt and trousers. By his side was a small wooden trunk containing all he owned, a few clothes, some notebooks, and the scarf Amara had hand-stitched for him. Amara busied herself with last-minute preparations, slipping a small pouch of her remaining savings into the trunk and tucking a letter into his pocket. Her hands trembled as she adjusted his collar, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to fall. "Obina," she said softly, her voice quivering, "the city is big and full of wonders, but never forget where you come from. Never forget who you are." "I won't, Mama," Obina replied, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "I promise I'll make you proud." As the bus rumbled into view, the villagers began to cheer, offering words of encouragement and advice. "Make us proud, Obina," shouted one. "Don't forget Amaobi," called another. Amara held his hand tightly as they walked toward the bus. She handed him the scarf, now folded neatly, and said, "This will keep you warm and remind you of home." Obina hugged her tightly, the moment stretching out as if both mother and son knew it was more than just a goodbye. As he climbed aboard the bus, he looked back to see her standing there, her small figure dwarfed by the crowd, yet radiating strength. The bus roared to life, kicking up a cloud of dust as it pulled away. Amara stood rooted to the spot, her hand raised in a silent farewell until the bus disappeared down the road. That evening, back in her empty hut, Amara sat by the fire and opened her Bible. Her lips moved in prayer as she asked for her son's safety and success. She whispered, "Lord, guide his steps and keep him humble." Though her heart ached with the loss of his daily presence, she felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. She had done all she could to prepare him for this moment, and now she could only trust that he would carry her love and lessons with him. Little did she know, the distance between them would grow far beyond the physical miles, testing the strength of the bond they shared. With Obina now in Ibuka City, life in Amaobi took on a quieter rhythm for Amara. The hustle and bustle of preparing for his education had been replaced by long days of weaving baskets and tending to her small garden. Though she worked tirelessly, the emptiness of her heart often weighed on her. Each evening, Amara would sit by the roadside, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She would watch the path leading to the village, hoping to see Obina's familiar figure walking toward her. Travelers from Ibuka City occasionally brought news of the bustling metropolis, and Amara would always ask, "Did you happen to see my son?" The villagers began to notice her routine. Some admired her devotion, while others whispered quietly among themselves. "She waits for a boy who has forgotten her," one said. "The city changes people," added another. But Amara refused to give in to their doubts. "My son will come back," she replied firmly whenever questioned. "He is busy building his future, but he will not forget me." At first, Obina wrote frequently. His letters were filled with stories of the city, its tall buildings, crowded markets, and the friends he had made. Amara would read these letters aloud to the villagers, her face glowing with pride. "My son is doing well," she would say. "He is making something of himself." However, as months turned into years, the letters became less frequent. Obina's words grew shorter, and the warmth they once carried seemed to fade. Amara held on to each letter like a treasure, rereading them on nights when the silence of her heart felt unbearable. To bridge the growing gap, she began sending small packages to him, hand-knitted socks, dried foods, and heartfelt notes. She spent her meager earnings on postage, convinced that each package carried a piece of her love. Yet the packages often went unanswered. One market day, as Amara sat by her stall, her neighbor Ngozi approached. "Amara," she began cautiously, "you have done enough for him. Maybe it's time to think of yourself." Amara shook her head, her voice steady. "A mother's love has no limits. I will wait as long as it takes." But as the seasons changed and the road remained empty, a quiet doubt began to creep into her heart. She prayed fervently, asking for strength and for her son to remember her. Unbeknownst to her, Obina's life in the city had taken a new direction, one that would draw him further away from the mother who had sacrificed everything for him. Years passed, and Amara's once tireless body began to show the weight of her sacrifices. Her hands, once strong and nimble, grew frail, and her back, once straight and proud, became bent from years of hard labor. Despite her declining health, she continued to weave baskets and tend to her small garden, refusing to let herself be idle. But the loneliness of her days was unrelenting. The letters from Obina had stopped completely, and the packages she sent to him remained unanswered. Though her heart ached, she never voiced her pain, holding steadfast to the hope that her son would one day return. One evening, as she sat outside her hut, gazing at the path she had watched for so many years, Amara felt a sharp pain in her chest. She clutched at her wrapper, her breathing labored. Her neighbor, Ngozi, noticed her distress and rushed to her side. "Amara, you need rest," Ngozi urged, helping her into the hut. "You've done too much for too long." The villagers, deeply concerned, decided to send a message to Obina in Ibuka City. The letter they composed was simple but urgent. "Your mother is gravely ill. Come quickly." They pooled their resources to ensure it reached him. As the days turned into weeks, Amara's condition worsened. The villagers took turns caring for her, bringing her food and sitting by her bedside. Despite their best efforts, her strength continued to fade. One evening, Chief Ikena, the village elder, visited her. Sitting beside her, he took her frail hand in his. "Amara," he said softly, "do you have any final words you'd like me to pass on to your son?" Amara's lips trembled as she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tell Obina that I loved him. Even in his silence, he was always my joy." That night, as the stars filled the sky, Amara passed away peacefully, a faint smile on her face. Her hands, now still, rested on the scarf she had made for her son years ago. The village mourned her deeply, and they prepared a modest grave beneath the large tree near her hut. The news of her passing was sent to Obina, but it was too late. Amara's vigil had ended, and the son she had devoted her life to was not there to bid her farewell. What remained was the weight of her unconditional love, and a silence that would soon echo louder than any words. In the bustling city of Ibuka, Obina sat in his luxurious office, surrounded by the trappings of his success. His life had become a whirlwind of meetings, deals, and social engagements. It had been years since he had thought about Amaobi or his mother's sacrifices. But on this day, his carefully curated world was shattered. A letter arrived, brought by a messenger. The envelope was simple and unassuming, yet its contents bore a heavy weight. As Obina unfolded the letter, his hands trembled. "Your mother Amara has passed away. She waited for you until her final breath. Her last words were, 'Tell Obina that I loved him. Even in his silence, he was my joy.'" The words struck Obina like a blow to the chest. He dropped the letter, his mind racing with memories of his mother's gentle face, her tireless hands, and her unwavering love. Regret coursed through him as he realized how deeply he had failed her. Without a second thought, he arranged to return to Amaobi. The sleek car he drove was a stark contrast to the dusty village roads. As he approached his childhood home, the sight of the small familiar hut brought tears to his eyes. Villagers gathered silently as Obina stepped out of the car. Their faces were a mix of pity and judgment. They had seen Amara's sacrifices and her years of waiting, and now they watched as her son arrived too late. Obina made his way to the grave beneath the large tree where his mother was buried. The wooden cross marking her resting place was simple, adorned with a small scarf she had made for him long ago. Overwhelmed by guilt, he fell to his knees and wept openly. "I'm sorry, Mama," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I should have been here. I should have done more." Chief Ikena approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Your mother's love for you never wavered, even when you were far away. But now, Obina, the best way to honor her is by living a life that reflects her sacrifices and values." Obina nodded, though the weight of his guilt felt almost unbearable. He read her final letter, the words etched into his heart forever. "My dear Obina, I am so proud of the man you have become. Live with kindness and gratitude and never forget where you come from. My love for you is eternal." Mama, the letter was both a comfort and a curse, a reminder of the love he had taken for granted and the time he could never reclaim. As the villagers watched him grieve, they hoped that his mother's sacrifice would not be in vain. Obina left the graveside with a heavy heart but a renewed sense of purpose. He vowed to ensure that her legacy would live on, though the void she left would never truly be filled. In the weeks following Amara's burial, Obina stayed in Amaobi, determined to honor his mother's memory and atone for his years of neglect. The village, though initially cold, began to see his sincerity as he immersed himself in their lives, listening to their stories and learning about the struggles they faced daily. One evening, as he sat under the large tree where his mother was laid to rest, Obina's gaze fell on the scarf she had left behind. He held it in his hands, the texture of the fabric reminding him of her tireless love. "I can never bring her back," he thought, "but I can ensure her sacrifices are never forgotten." The next day, Obina gathered the village elders, including Chief Ikena, and shared his plan to build a school in Amara's honor. "My mother believed in education," he said, his voice steady. "It is what lifted me from this village. I want every child here to have the same opportunity." The elders nodded in agreement, and soon the entire village rallied behind the project. Obina used his resources to fund the construction of the school, which he named Amara Memorial Academy. He worked alongside the villagers, carrying bricks and clearing land, his city suit replaced by simple work clothes. As the school took shape, so did the bond between Obina and the villagers. Children would run up to him, curious about his life in the city, and elders shared wisdom that reminded him of his mother's teachings. He found himself mentoring the younger generation, encouraging them to dream big but never forget their roots. On the day of the school's grand opening, the village was alive with celebration. The brightly painted building stood as a beacon of hope, with a plaque at the entrance that read, "In loving memory of Amara, a mother's love, a community's legacy." Obina stood before the crowd, his voice filled with emotion as he addressed them. "This school is not just a building," he said. "It is a testament to my mother's love and the sacrifices she made. It is a reminder that no matter how far we go, we must always remember where we come from." The children cheered, the villagers clapped, and for the first time in years, Obina felt a sense of peace. Though his mother was gone, her spirit lived on in every brick of the school, in every child who walked through its doors, and in every life it would transform. As the sun set that evening, Obina returned to his mother's grave. Kneeling before the wooden cross, he placed a bouquet of wildflowers and whispered, "I hope I'm making you proud, Mama." Though the pain of her loss remained, Obina found solace in knowing that her legacy would endure, not just through him, but through the community she had inspired. We've come to the end of this story. Please subscribe to my channel to support me. Thank you.